get that started. Yes, so welcome back to round two of the solar talks here. And so I just wanted to kind of pick up where we left off and discussing a bit about the work that we've done to try to build out a low to moderate income solar programs here in Philadelphia. Now, last week I spoke about the program that was called the Solar Savings Grant Program, which was sort of a pilot program run by the Philadelphia Energy Authority. And in my view, was quite successful. We were able to get 50 homeowners, a very subsidized solar array. And in general, we were able to get it in many different areas in Philadelphia that we aren't typically installing solar in. I think over 26 different zip codes were representative. Today, I want to talk a little bit about what is next for the low to moderate income program, because initially I thought, hey, this worked well. We'll try to do this again. Part of what I learned is that so much of this is dependent on funding. It's dependent on a bunch of channel partners that sort of agreed to specific terms, and we weren't necessarily able to do it again exactly the way that we did it in the past. So today I'm gonna pick up and discuss what the PEA is doing today, and I would love to hear also. I know that you all are involved with some home restoration projects in Germantown as well. So I would love to kind of hear about that and see whether we can maybe connect the dots here. So Philadelphia Energy Authority has this Built to Last initiative, which is in partnership with the PHDC, if people are familiar with the Philadelphia. Try to pull this up for you here. I believe it's the Housing
Development Corporation.
Yes, thank you, Bill. I didn't want to get it wrong. I was going to guess, and then sometimes these acronyms will get you. So the PHDC is already doing fantastic work to help homeowners who are already living in their homes to make much needed repairs to their homes, often for very cheap or free. And the goal here is that if we can do basic repairs to the home, well, can we also incorporate a drive to increase the efficiency of the home, help it be, reduce the utility costs, and eventually integrate solar. So one of the things last week I discussed was that eligibility for the Solar Savings Grant Program was dependent on 80% of area median income. Eligibility for being considered a low-income resident to benefit from PHDC is actually even more stringent. You have to be 50% of area median income. So it's for those Philadelphians that are really struggling and quite low income. And so the PHDC does have an open program where you can sign up for these basic systems repairs, what they call it. So it'd be if your water main is broken, or your roof needs to be maintained, or your electric system is still knob and tube and needs to be brought up to code. And they are now integrating this with what they're calling their Built to Last initiative, which is to really try to do as much as we can to assist people with their energy burden, as well as these solar projects. So essentially, the PHDC is identifying eligible homeowners. Then they conduct a property assessment. When they're doing the property assessment, they're assessing it for its solar capabilities as well. So they're looking at the electrical system, they're looking at the roof. Eventually, they do basic systems repair, and then they are partnering with solar states to, essentially spec out solar projects for this. And in this case, it's my understanding that the solar will be completely free for the homeowner, and it will be an ownership model, and they will be installed at no cost. So I'm still learning some about this program. We haven't installed any of these projects yet, but we're in the phase of assessing and building the designs. And there's always some back and forth with the PEA about what type of systems, they want to see how big of a solar system. Typically they're shooting for like a 90% offset, as best as we can to get people fully, solar powered. So this is what we're working on today as a follow-up. And, just as a reminder, for those, I'm not sure if everybody was here the last time, but this is very similar to what we want to do in Hunting Park as well. So the Hunting Park Community Solar Initiative, I mentioned the last time, this is a locally community-driven program that is already working, with a number of green and environmental justice initiatives and churches in the area. And they're already doing, basic things like helping with tree plantings. We mentioned that Hunting Park is one of the hottest neighborhoods when it comes to, heat index, and Beat the Heat initiatives have found Hunting Park is really very vulnerable to climate impacts and heat waves. And so tree cover is really critical, and it's like one of the main things that makes a difference in this. So already these organizations were getting out trees. Already people, a lot of these organizations like HPNAC, the and the HPCRC, they were already giving out free air conditioning units and helping people get window kits or, different energy efficiency measures for their homes. And so, again, this is getting to this idea that in order to get to the point where you can get solar installed and you can even think about, okay, where is my energy coming from? You have to have a roof over your head that's not leaking. You have to have an electrical system that's up to code that Pico is going to allow you to interconnect with. And, if you add loads to the house, you're not going to strain this electrical system and be in a difficult situation. So, we really think that this is an important model when thinking about low to moderate income solar programs, that it's more of a wraparound approach, that if we're going to talk about putting solar on a house, we're not just doing it in a vacuum, and we're not trying to pitch it to people who are, have other, struggles in their lives that may seem more pressing. And, I think that solar can be a strong benefit, but it often needs to come after a roof is redone, after an electrical system is redone. So I'm just going to stop there for a moment and see if anybody has any questions about the PHDC. And also I would love to hear, a bit about the work you have done in Germantown around like similar home repair stuff.
How is the Hunting Park Solar Initiative funded?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And, the truth is they are a nascent organization and they have very little funding at all. It's a volunteer-based organization, mostly comprised of local block captains and pastors of churches. We did apply for and receive funding from the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, the DEP, and we were able to get money to start the solar training classroom at Vocasio Career Prep. I had mentioned last week that we are looking at a solar project for Vocasio. So Vocasio is an existing, vocational and technical career school, and they already do amazing work. They have programs ranging from carpentry, welding, photography studio. They have a computer lab. They already train in a variety of subjects, and they're connected with some churches in the area, and we are building out a solar training classroom. And part of that was we applied for a grant from the DEP that we received, and we're using that to build this program. The other funding mechanism is through a solar referral program. So Solar States ironed out an MOA, like an agreement between them that we do. In general, a lot of solar companies offer a referral bonus. If you refer somebody to us and that person goes to contract, and we'll pay a certain amount of money. When we find a really strong partner, in particular, there's somebody named Alan Drew with the Climate Witness Project, who eventually brought us to Larry Moyer, who eventually brought us to you all here and everybody at Second Baptist. Alan, has a lot of connections in faith communities, being that he's a part of the Climate Witness Project. And, Alan and Matt Lynn, who's a part of One Hope Community Church, and Andy Kim, who's pastor of 8th Street Community Church, we came together and we said, if we're going to create this program and you guys can refer us business in Hunting Park or get us other churches who are interested in going solar, we will create a referral program that will give you significantly more. Typically, we give $500 for referral bonus, which is nice. But we said we would give 20 cents a watt, or another way to think about that is $200 per kilowatt for a project that goes to contract. And so just as an example, if you're to look at this project that we eventually are going to bring to fruition here with Penn and Second Baptist, this was brought to us through the Hunting Park program. And because this was a referral, we're going to be paying Hunting Park Community Solar Initiative for this project. Penn's portion of it is a 15.48 kilowatt system. And, by $200, that's like $3,000 that we'll pay into the Hunting Park Community Solar Initiative just from Penn, and another $2,000 off the 11 kW. I believe it's 11.16 is the array that Second Baptist will be getting. So overall, this is one of the ways that we believe we can have sort of a funding mechanism based around solar adoption. This is something that we've done with the Solarize Philly program. There is a what's called a program fee. So every Solarize Philly lead that the PEA drums up that they give to solar states, we pay them a similar amount of money. Generally it's a price per watt. And so that's one of the mechanisms. But Hunting Park Community Solar Initiative, being that they're only about a year and a half old, they haven't had the chance to fully get their ducks in a row and become a nonprofit, but they are working towards the goal of getting 501c3 status and being able to apply for more grants and receive charitable donations and all of that. So, again, it's nascent, but part of it, the goal is to have it solar adoption be driving, one of their main ways that they can actually receive funding.
Jackson, can you, it's a good segue. Alan Drew that you mentioned has presented here, and I've had gotten to know him and had conversations with him, and he had forwarded information to you about the 4 or so faith communities in Hunting Park that are potential solar projects, from Alan's own church to one smaller church being I think it was Matt Lynn's church. And I was wondering, I looked at the breakdown of what it would take to get those going, and those are all sort of in the potential phase. So with what you just presented, what would it take for even one of the smaller ones to get off the ground? What's holding it back? I mean, it sounds like you mentioned so many positive things to get these going. What does it take to get one of these going?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I really appreciate you kind of bringing it to the real world. So what I'll say is that, as I mentioned, with the low to moderate income programs, one major thing often before we can explore solar is the roof. Right. So we've been held up at One Hope Community Church, which is Pastor Matt Lynn's church, and it's a relatively small project. They only need about 10 kW. It'd probably be in the range of around $30,000, and that would be 100% offset. They have roof space for like 40 kW, but they don't even need all that roof space. I'll give you a look at the array here. Let me pull it up here. Actually, I think I have it in this presentation built out. Here we go. This is One Hope Community Church. I guess they need around 12,000 kilowatt hours, which they could probably do with about 10 kW. Again, this would be in the neighborhood of around $30,000 project, but the roof needs to be redone first, and they don't have the funds to do that. It could be they have multiple roofs to work with, so it could be that we end up using a different roof. But part of the thing is sometimes you need a catalyst of like some money coming in, or something that gets us started. With Second Baptist Church, I don't know that people would have necessarily really entertained the notion if we hadn't had Larry Moyer saying, hey, well, I'm willing to kick in some money for this. Can we get together the money that everybody needs to put together and see if we can, really do this? I could just give you a sense. This is One Hope's church campus. So they actually have multiple roof faces. They have this one here. They have this larger section, which is in some part shaded by this tree. And they have these upper roofs as well, which may be suitable for solar as well. So that's one project. And I do think that, like, once one person said, oh, well, I'm willing to donate to this project, and then started looking for other sources of funding, we started to put things together, the project became more and more real as it came. I try to do my best to make projects seem real by building out little arrays and telling them how much it's going to cost. But until there's some money there, it's like, well, are we going to get a grant for it? Or I don't have 30,000 in the bank. The church, has other needs, So that's been the holdup here. There's some roofing concerns, and then, the actual funds for the solar array. One thing to consider is that, is everybody familiar with the tax credit? I mentioned that, before, we have a tax credit that's available for solar. So 26% of the system cost comes back to you at tax time. Now, if you're a church or you're a nonprofit entity, you do not pay taxes, and so you do not see a tax credit. This is a huge barrier for nonprofits. This is a huge chunk of change for a $30,000 solar project. Just for perspective, that's a value of almost $8,000 that you're missing out on. Now, there are different ways to capitalize on the tax benefit. One way is there is currently a law being considered at the federal level called the Build Back Better Act, which a lot of people have probably heard of. And the Build Back Better Act, as it passed the House, has a provision in it that would make the tax credit 30%, and it would extend it for 10 years through 2033. And it would make the tax credit fully refundable, which meant that it was not based upon your taxable income. And that even in, entities that do not have any taxable income, or individuals who may not have any taxable income, like they're living on Social Security or something of that nature, they could still receive the tax refund back. So that would be huge. That would be a game changer for a lot of churches. A lot of churches get stalled out because the economics of solar are often dependent upon the idea that you pay for the system and you get a big tax credit back. And that's often how the loans are structured too. If you end up doing a loan program, you get an intro monthly rate, and then when you get the tax credit back, you put that down towards the loan, and then you keep paying a low monthly rate. And that's generally how the economics look of going solar, is the same or less costly than your current PICO bill. If you don't get the tax credit, the economics start to look that solar is more costly than your current PICO bill until you pay off your loan. And that might be 15 years from now. And that's a hard sell to a lot of churches, that we're going to, basically be increasing your costs. Now, a lot of people want to go solar, but they don't want to increase their cost in the process of it. So, what I think is probably the best model that we were able to work with Second Baptist Church was, we had a donor who then solicited other donations, which then encouraged PIN to go out and get a grant, which then encouraged, Second Baptist to look into their own, building property fund and see what they could afford out of that. And together, from a variety of sources, they just paid for the system outright, rather than looking at a loan, rather than worrying about the tax credit. They just put together a number of donations and grants and were able to make it happen. And they actually, they started out, they were looking at a 10 kW system, and they ended up getting like a 27 kW system. And so that's part of the thing, is I do feel that, like, with, generosity breeds generosity. People who see that others are kicking in towards this idea, hey, this project is really cool, can we add a couple more panels? Okay, I got you down for a couple grand to support this project, now we can grow it a little bit. I think that, and also the strategic partnership of multiple entities to have PIN and Second Baptist involved was definitely helpful. So that's how we made that project happen. And I do think something like that is going to be necessary for these other projects. I want to just touch on another project that I think is really feasible and would be a great project. I think it's just been a challenge getting it off the ground. And this is 8th Street Community Church. People may or may not be familiar with it. It's really a small church. It's run by Pastor Andy Kim, and they are based in Hunting Park as well. And they have basically a row home that they run the church facility out of. One of the things I love about Pastor Andy Kim is he helped found Vocatio Career Prep as well. He does a lot of work with youth in the community, and as you can see, their church is really just the end of the row. It's it's the end of this row here. So it's very similar to like a residential solar project. They don't have a terribly high electrical usage, and so we really think that it wouldn't be that challenging. This is 8th Street Church right here. You can see them at the end of the row here on North 8th Street. And this project, with a mere 6 kW, they can produce more than they're using today because they're only using 6,000 kilowatt hours annually. On a loan, it'd be around $20,000 if they were able to put the money together, even with our Hunting Park discount. I mentioned earlier that we offer a referral bonus. Typically, how the program is structured is that if the referral comes to us is not in the neighborhood of Hunting Park, then we offer it as a bonus and we pay Hunting Park Community Solar Initiative that money. If the referral comes to us as an individual or a business or an entity in Hunting Park, we offer it as a discount. So this is that 20 cents a watt discount here. As you can see, it's about a 6.3 kW times $200. The discount is $12.60. So that's that discount baked into the pie here. So this is cheaper than they would even see through Solarized Philly pricing. And the total system cost would be around $17.3. But as you can see, they can't capitalize on the tax credit, which is $4,500. They still could get SRECs, they still could benefit from that, but they haven't been able to put this money together. I think we could probably put this money together pretty easily with some strategic donations or maybe a small grant. But this is an amazing project. This is a group that has worked for a long time to try to get solar. They recently actually redid the roof here at 8th Street Community Church. So I think that this could happen relatively easily. So this is the smallest church project that we are looking at. Then there is the One Hope Community Church, which has some roofing issues. And then there's the church that Alan Drew goes to, which is Spirit and Truth Fellowship. This is a much larger project, but they have just one of the best roofs I've ever seen in Philadelphia for solar. This roof here is huge, wide open, directly pitched south. I can pull up the location. And this is also really in this, what I would call like the center of Hunting Park, and sort of this area that so many of our projects are based, where there is a church here, there's Esperanza Health Center, Vocatio Career Prep is there, as well as Aspira, which is a school in the area. It's really a wonderful block, and this would be a very visible project as well, which I love. Sometimes people don't love to see solar panels. I think it's great to see them and encourages other people to adopt them. But you can see right here, this church roof is beyond fantastic. It's like pitched 20 degrees perfectly to the south. They also have flat roofs that are available. And then, as you can see, it's right across the street from Vocatio Career Prep and Esperanza Health Center, which are two entities we're also looking at trying to solarize, and we've been working with a lot. This is a much larger project, but its feasibility is definitely there because it just gets such a good sun score and has such good sun potential. They use a much larger amount of energy here, about 52,000 kilowatt hours. This is like 10 times what a home would use, and about 10 times what they're using at 8th Street Community Church. And so it's a much larger system. We'd be looking at putting at least 45, 50 kW on the roof. But we think we can get 100% offset. The system would be considerably more costly. Let me see if I have the breakout for that one on hand. I don't have it on hand right at this moment, but let me see. I think it would be helpful to discuss this. Yeah, so this is 116 panels. This is about a 40 kW. I think there's actually a more up-to-date proposal. Here we go. This is using higher wattage panels to get to that 44 kW with 116 of them. The overall price would be like $130,000. So this is where, you know, a lot of projects see that and then they decide, well, that's the end of the road for us. Where are we going to get 100 grand from? You know, now if we could do it on loan, or we could get some help, or we get a grant, that sounds well and good, but somebody's got to figure that out. So this is sort of where a lot of these projects get stalled out, is they look at the dollar figure, they look at their account, and they say, well, how are we going to make this pencil out? But in my view, I think, one, there are a couple grants that folks haven't yet applied for that we need to, you know, make better use of. Also, I think we could use sort of this crowdfunding model that Larry and you all help participate in, which is to say, we're all working together to try to solarize, you know, 8th Street Church, and we just try to raise the money together.
Jackson, I see that Ned Claxton is on the call, and I wonder if he's on the board of PIHN. You know, this just how that's moving forward and whatnot. Nick, would you care to make any comment about how this solar initiative is moving forward at Penn?
Well, yeah, it's moving forward, and as far as I understand, we signed the contract, or we were planning to sign the contract just within the last couple of weeks. Is that right, Jackson?
Yep. So we got a signed contract from Penn as well as from Second Baptist right over the Christmas holidays. I believe Bob Byrne from Penn signed maybe like the 2nd or 3rd day of January. So we are in the stage of engineering and documentation. So I could kind of like briefly break down what happens after you sign a contract with solar. Maybe that'd be helpful for everybody to understand. So typically the process from solar design to installation can take around 3 to 4 months. So what we do prior to contract signing is we conduct a design survey and we create a very detailed proposal. In this case, you could see, you know, look at Penn's proposal. We were able to create a drone rendering. After we flew a drone over the property, we create a 3D rendering of the system. We also discussed a variety of the different ways that we could potentially interconnect this system. So, you know, we worked out that we were going to do, you know, only the flat roof. So Penn will only be installed on the flat roof here, and they're using a ballasted array. As a reminder for those who are not here the last time, when we ballast the system, it means we don't have to make any roof penetrations, and we can actually just weigh the system down with cinder blocks, and you know, it's a way of protecting a roof. This roof was redone in 2019, so it's a fairly new roof. But one of the things that's unique about the Penn array is because Penn does not own Second Baptist, they have entered into a lease agreement, and so they had a lawyer that was communicating between the entities that was, you know, ironing out a lease agreement. You can see again Penn solar array there. So with the interconnection, the next step is to apply to PICO for interconnection permission. Part of what we need to do that is we need to create an engineered document called a electrical line diagram. and we need to, get sorted how we're going to do the metering. So in this case, one of the things PIN has to do is they actually have to take over the meter at the parsonage. Prior to, they were just paying for the electricity they were using at the parsonage, but they will have to actually put the meter in their name so that we can apply in their name to this. Nick, you might want to take notes on this because it's been a minute since I talked with Bob about all this. We do need you guys to take over the meter at the parsonage. That would be a next step for you all. So when we apply for interconnection, once we have their engineering doc sets, PICO, they generally either approve the project outright or they give us a conditional approval, in which case sometimes we have to fix certain aspects of the proposal in order to apply again. So this process can take sometimes up to a month and a half. The next step is to apply to the local AHJ. In this case, it's the City of Philadelphia License and Inspections for permits. We get a building and electrical permit. We also get the roof certified. We get an engineer firm to give us a roof cert. Typically, that means we have to look at the rafters. We have to, submit, a document that shows the spacing of the rafters and what the roof is structurally weighted for. I know people had asked in the past about, roof weight. This is often the main concern for churches. It's often for people as well, but churches, especially with old roofs, speaking with another church or recently, there was they wanted the roof cert before they even signed the contract because they just want to be sure about it. With the engineered solution here, with the ballasted array, it's a very low weight in terms of what roofs are capable of bearing. It's typical 5 pounds per square foot, where roof loads often from snow or water can be up to 30, 40 pounds per square foot. So it's a minimal weight because it distributes the weight across multiple of these ballast trays. So
Jackson, I see that we have a number of comments and questions
okay,
in the
thank
chat.
you.
Want to make sure we get to that, but is any other comment on PIHN? It seems like it's moving forward, which is great.
Moving forward, and the estimated installation date would probably be around May. That would be my guess.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, just interest in the survey results. Maybe just quickly, Mark. They've been trickling in. I know I just sent mine in. Any report on the survey?
Well, I hadn't looked this morning. There were a small number of responses. I will put the connection to the survey in the chat so that people can contribute. It just takes a couple of minutes. I would like to go back to, there were some good questions connecting to these,
Right.
to the PIN project and to the Hunting Park projects. For instance, if you can summarize, or like Bill Ewing had a good comment about, since there's nonprofit issues with like the churches, could there be a rental? So better just to go ahead and look at his question there, because I'm really interested in the tangibility of getting one of these projects off the ground, of what FUMCOG could do to support, like they have been a major supporter of the Penn Second Baptist project. What would it take? And Jackson has alluded to like the crowdfunding aspect of that, and it is a way for us to get involved, and for FUMCOG, who is involved in has been involved in social justice issues. This really brings us up to the big existential issue of our times, which is climate change, and it all connects, it all intersects. So there are a couple of these issues in the chat. If we can address some of those questions, I think that would be good time well spent for the next few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm seeing a lot of awesome suggestions. Just trying to sort of like read through now. Some of which people are suggesting, is there a way that some other entity could own the solar system and then rent it back to the church? This is something that is very feasible. And in fact, it's something we've explored before. If there's an individual or an entity that has a tax liability and wants to help support this solar development, not only can they claim the tax credit, but they can also claim another tax benefit called bonus asset depreciation, which in general, when your commercial entity is able to take both of these into account, they can get close to 50% of the cost of the solar array come back to them at tax time. So one of the challenges there, though, is that, I mean, I don't know if Larry minds that to say that I did pitch this to him. Do you want to just own the system and then sell it back to PIN after you've claimed the tax credit? And a lot of people don't want to deal with the complexity of that. You know what I mean? That, oh, I own it and I have liability if something happens, and then I'm going to sell it back to you. Typically, you have to own it for at least the period of time that you get interconnected, and then a year's worth of production, and then you get the tax credit, and then you could potentially give it back to another entity sell it to them for $1 or whatever the case is down the line. So that is one option. It often falls flat, even when sometimes people propose, well, could we create an LLC to do this? One of the challenges with doing that, creating your own LLC to do that, is you have to have some goods or services in order to have taxable income, right? So the LLC would have to do something that was taxable in order to benefit from a tax credit. So typically, it'd make more sense if you're like, we've worked a lot with like landlords and people who have multiple properties, and maybe they have, high taxes for a business that they're already engaged in, and this could make sense. Another suggestion that I saw thrown out there was, is there sort of a rental program, or what we would call a lease program? Typically, this is known as a power purchase agreement. Sort of basically a third-party entity develops a solar array on somebody's roof, and then they rent it back to them. And Kaki Evans also threw this out, that there's a sustainable energy fund was still providing 1% interest loans up to 100K. We have looked into this, and I pitched this to the Honey Park program. And then also there is the Clean Energy Co-op that I mentioned the last time, that basically offers a low interest, affordable PPA. What I'll say about this is, I love the question Dolores Broberg asked, is there a tipping point for solar ventures to become advantageous for them? And here's what I'd say. Without the tax credit, when you look at these PPA models, one of the things to remember is that commercial entities pay a lot less for their electricity than do residential entities. Typically, residential electric costs about 14 cents in PICO territory. Commercial energy costs about 6.5 cents. Now, if you want to get mad about something, big businesses are paying less for electricity than you are. That's weird. Why is that? They're using more electricity than you. Why do they pay less? Anyway, but one thing to consider there is that because those rates are so low, to try to beat them without a tax credit is very difficult. So I would say the tipping point for an institution that typically cannot get the tax credit, you're going to want to fundraise at least 30% and up to 50% of the total system cost, and put that as a down payment, right? If you need to finance the remainder of the cost, so let's take the 8th Street Community Church example. If we could raise about $8,000 for that $18,000 project, the economics of financing it would look superb. It would look great. You'd get it on a low interest loan, and it'd be less than what they're paying electric right now, right? If you get 50%, it would be a no-brainer. You're like, oh, I'm already paying for the system halfway. I could probably get a shorter term loan, maybe a 5 or 10-year loan, pay this thing off quick, and could finance the rest of the way with one of these awesome loan programs that are out there. If you have no money to put down on it, and you look at the economics of financing it, generally you got to swallow the bitter pill of, this is going to cost more until we get this thing paid off, which is not something a lot of entities are willing to do. So that's why PPA models have not really jumped off in Pennsylvania, in part because our SREC prices are low, but also because our electric prices, although it may not seem this way, they are relatively low compared to our neighbors. Like, just as an example, in PICO territory, you pay like 13, 14 cents residentially. Across the river in New Jersey, they're paying 17, 18 cents for electricity. right? In other states, they pay considerably more. That California electricity rates cost like 25 cents. It's a really, really high. And so solar becomes more of a no-brainer when you have SRECs and high electric prices, and that cost to compare is a lot different. In Pennsylvania, a lot of PPAs end up falling apart because the economics don't look.
Jackson, could I just add a comment? This is Larry.
Yeah.
The issue you're raising here is one that has troubled me for a long time, and it was very much in in my mind and in Marilyn's mind when we proposed the PIN project. The public conversation about solar is focused on what's affordable, what's cheaper. If we are going to look strictly at what's cheaper, we will never achieve the goal of renewable energy. It also means that as people of privilege, we must think of ourselves as contributors to change, not people who are in it to save money. And this is, I hope FUMCOG will see as a critical issue in what it decides to do. Not because it's cheaper, but because it's the right thing to do.
Appreciate that, Larry. I think that is an important sentiment, and I think sometimes even in the sales role at solar, we're taught to sell on savings, but then we look at it and it's like, well, are we saving immediately or what are we doing? And so from my perspective, coming out of an environmental justice background, I've always tried to emphasize first that we're getting away from fossil fuels. We're improving your home. We're moving in a direction of things we want to see in the world. And if we're willing to do that, then we're willing to make an investment that may not pay off for a long time. And that's a different conversation than saying, well, it's going to save you money tomorrow, which a lot of companies will tell you that they're saving you money as they reach in your pocket, and that's not always the best conversation. Do people have other questions or thoughts?
Jackson.
Yeah. Thanks,
Jackson,
Dan.
I just make a comment. We decided here at our house to buy renewables, both electric and gas, from, I think it's the Energy Co-op. I don't keep abreast of this every minute. But in the interim, before we're even able to consider solar, we feel like at least we're moving forward by using renewables through group projects, such as methane from waste dumps, and then renewables through the electric company. So it's an intermediary step in some ways. We're not gaining any production from solar panels, but at least we feel we're mitigating our use of non-renewables. So that's a thought, a comment that I've kind of struggled with,
Yeah, to your point.
going all through these conversations.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Stan. And I just want to say one piece on that is often I see people have already taken that initial step of getting a third-party supplier for their electric or gas. And to me, it kind of proves the point that Larry made, which is that people are willing to pay a little bit more for renewable energy because believe it or not, those programs are not cheaper. PECO will offer it to your generation rate around 6.5 cents. I think the Energy Co-op offers about 9 or 12 cents. It's considerably more, but people say, well, I'm supporting a good thing, and I think if you take that same mentality to I'm going to get solar on my house or for my church or this institution I care about, then I'm willing to pay a little bit more every month because it's the right thing to do.
Jackson, I wonder, we do have a bit more time, and there could be more questions coming, but I'm wondering, you earlier proposed to inserting a little bit on the policy, and I read immediately politics for political considerations. Part of the response, I think, to this challenge of getting more scale to solar has to do with those kind of policies and whatnot. Do you see any, in these difficult times, do you see any direction of where public policy is going to become more of a player here? You mentioned Philadelphia Health Development Corporation, which has got resources. Could we lobby to get more resources for PHDC? Those kind of. I'm just wondering what's on your list of those kind of initiatives.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll broadly break it into 3 tiers. We have the federal government, we have the state government, and we have local entities. What we've seen from the federal government has been extremely lackluster. I mean, I just want to throw it out there. The only solar policy we have at the federal level is this tax credit, which was created by 2 oil barons who love tax credits. The National Energy Policy Act of 2005 was written by Dick Cheney and passed by George Bush and the Republican legislature. That created the 30% tax credit, and it was slated to expire in 2020, and that's what Trump allowed it to do, right? That's why it's 26% today. Luckily, one bright spot is one of the coronavirus stimulus packages extended the tax credit. It was supposed to be 22% today, or actually it's supposed to be 22% last year, and then it would have gone away entirely this year. So luckily it got extended at the federal level. What we have seen, at the federal level is it's continued to be gridlock, right? They did get an infrastructure bill passed. Now, the infrastructure bill was completely gutted of all climate provisions, except for electrifying transportation, right? So people may have seen this. There's a lot of money out there to get charging stations, to get electric buses, to get a new modernized grid that can handle more electrical load. So that is one thing we've seen at the federal level. The second thing we're looking at is whether the Build Back Better Act will happen, right? I mean, right now, much of its fate is controlled by Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema. It does have that tax credit expansion, but one thing we know it's not going to have is a clean energy standard, which is really what it needed. But that's the thing that Joe Manchin hates more than anything, because the clean energy standard sets targets for how much clean energy needs to be on the grid, and it sets targets for how much coal and gas needs to come off the grid. And so every year there was going to be 4% reduction in the amount of fossil fuels produced on the grid, getting us towards 25 years from now having 100% renewable energy. Joe Manchin didn't like that, and that it means we will not see a clean energy standard, right? And so in the absence of federal policy, let's say we even get the tax credit, which would be lovely. But in the absence of that, what can we do? So one thing I will say is the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, this is a huge stimulus bill that was passed in 2020. And we have used this bill to some great effect to get a project going in North Philadelphia on a childcare center, Prodigy Learning Center in Hunting Park, or not in Hunting Park, but sorry, on Hunting Park Avenue in North Philadelphia. ARPA is basically, there's a lot of federal money supporting a number of programs, one of which is that there's a lot of money to support kids. And that means if you're a registered childcare center, you can apply for funds which can be used to improve your building and your facility. In this case, we connected with the child care center on Hunting Park Avenue, and they were going to get their roof redone. They were going to get some electrical work redone, and they ended up going forward with a huge 116 kW project, 2 large solar arrays, and it's fully funded by ARPA money. So this is something that when they pass these big stimulus bills, generally federal funds flow down to the states, and the states have to find places to distribute them to. They all have to be registered entities with the state. But just a look at this, this is a huge project, 140,000 kilowatt hours annually produced, and $300,000, and that was completely funded by the federal government. So I can keep people abreast of that, but that I'm just going to leave it federal.
We'd appreciate that if because FUMCOG is place for advocacy as well. So, and we do continue to work with Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light, who seems to me have stepped it up some on the policy side as well. So there are a few more comments, questions. Let's take another 5 minutes or so on these, Jackson. And I see Bill ask about the regional housing legal services.
I do not know about them, Bill, but I'd be happy to get connected.
Yeah, I will do that then.
Yeah.
They're out in Glenside, I think primarily. But they do this kind of stuff in terms of developing deals for nonprofits to take advantage, like of low-income housing subsidies and historic housing subsidies. So I'm thinking of this as another possibility along those lines.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, please connect us.
And then a comment also from Bill about tapping United Methodist Conference. Bill, this is a question on your part. Could they be used for solar installations, right?
Well, I just think of it as a possibility. I don't know the answer, but
Yeah.
and I'm sure Jackson doesn't. But in terms of Methodist churches, there is a low-interest loan fund at the conference level that potentially, if a low-interest loan would make a difference, could be used for one of these developments.
Okay, good. Other comments or questions? We
Just wanted to. Oh,
No,
go for
I'm
it.
sorry, if I could jump back in just to sort of intersect with John, you've had conversations recently with Joe Waldo, who was on the call last week. I don't think he's here this week,
Right.
of the URDC. So just to broadly, this is an organization that essentially was started at FUMCOG. We continue to support, and the work that a lot of the concepts that Jackson is talking about seem like they would apply to things that URDC is doing and what we've been supporting. John, do you have anything to, articulate a question to Jackson about that?
Well, I would just note that Joe and his team and board and all are really thinking creatively at URDC now. We have a very good extension of the home repair program that will now help preserve the assets of these low-income homes, row houses, et cetera, in Germantown, with cooperations from some lending institutions. That's moving along into its second year. I've arranged for this coming Tuesday for Joe to meet with actually my sort of, I guess I call him my unofficial son, who's a member, who runs a affordable housing corporation in the greater Philadelphia area. And he's a member of the PHDC board. And he's volunteered. He loves FUMCOG and he doesn't attend, but he loves FUMCOG. And he's volunteered to meet with Joe to talk about, discuss the PHDC programs and solar. I think maybe Francis Vargas did listen in last week. I'm pretty sure he did. So we might, Mark, kind of work some at trying to knit some of these things together. We're very happy with where URDC is headed right now. So thank you very, very much, Jackson. We keep learning. Like your energy, like your ideas, your knowledge. Really do appreciate it. So let's give him a round. We got another good turnout today. So thank you very much.
Thank you all.
And I'll just say quickly, did you have a final thought, Jackson?
No, I mean, all I would say really is just that, I really appreciate all the work that you have done and the fact that you are continuing to educate yourselves about this stuff. And, if possible, I would say, let's see if we can select another church like Second Baptist that we could try to put a crowdfunding campaign together for. So if you all are open to it, I can go back to folks in Hunting Park and say, hey, which one of these do we think makes the most sense? Let's try to make this happen in 2022.
Well, Mark is driving our Climate Action Committee forward. And Mark, we might as well put out a pitch. We'd very much welcome others to join the Climate Action Committee and bring ideas and these possibilities that Jackson has laid out. And so, yeah, we're moving ahead. So, Mark, you want to? This is really so much of this is Mark's leadership. So he asked me to be the front guy, but it's really his leadership. So, Mark, any final word you want to give?
No, thanks, Jackson, for being here. It's part of our work. We've FUMCOG has stepped up with the creation of a climate action committee to, you know, the things that FUMCOG holds dear about social justice. Everything intersects in my words, what you're calling it: social justice, environmental justice, racial justice. It's all the same thing. And that's why I felt strongly like we need to be engaged the way FUMCOG has been with its wonderful history through you know, the civil rights movement and that kind of thing. So I'm really, really grateful. I'm grateful to Larry for, you know, being FUMCOG and making us aware of this project that we were able to support. And that's why I'm really interested in, like, what else can we do as FUMCOG to create awareness that leads to action. And it could be anything, but, you know, of course, right now we've talked about some of these possibilities of some of the churches in these opportunities in Hunting Park. I would love to continue to explore that. And I'd like to invite all the FUMCOG members to get more involved. We've got 6 members of our Climate Action Committee meeting, and room for plenty more on the Zoom calls. We've got another meeting this Tuesday. I will post that and you can just show up and listen in. We'll talk about what happened on this call and what we'll be doing next. So again, thanks everybody. Thanks for the great turnout, and thanks Jackson again for showing up for these 2 weeks.
And a quick little ad for the Adult Academies that are coming up. First of all, we'd welcome further ideas from everyone, but anyone who wants to help put these programs together, we'd very much welcome that. Right, Stan? Right, Kara? And just to let you know that we have something really exciting coming up at the end of February. We don't have everything planned between now and February, but the end of February, Father Joseph will come and lead us in the Adult Academy and also preach that Sunday, the last Sunday of February. So that's really something to look forward to. So, and many, many other things coming along. So, and again, Stan is providing great leadership on that too. So thank you, Stan. So thank you all.
Thanks, Jackson. Thanks, everybody.